Welcome to Katie's Classroom, where today we are talking about gene key number 10. When we talk about gene key, I want you to think of your 64 strands of DNA, your genes, as locks. And these are keys that are in the right tone and the right language and the right words to unlock a higher expression of that DNA, to unlock your natural potential. None of this full stuff. We're always at our full potential. We're actually always at our natural potential. It's whether or not we're in harmony or in fear, which is disharmony, as we'll talk about. And so today is all about gene key 10. If you are looking at your gene key chart or human design chart, you can play bingo and see if it shows up there. If it does, this will be very relevant to your life. And if it doesn't, it will also be very relevant to your life. Whether or not this is a theme that you're here to work with or an energy that you've experienced, you're meant to be wise about. Um, we all have the experience of these 64 archetypes in our lifetime. And this one specifically is the gift of naturalness. Have you ever seen anybody that is just a natural athlete, a natural talented musician? Of course you have. We know about these people. This is embodying that gift in a way that outsiders can see. But the gift of gate 10, of gene key 10, is being at ease. And each one of these genes will either be a yin or a yang energy. And I think it's significant to note that this is a yin energy. Yin energies mean that there will be some romancing involved. It is the dark side, if you will, which is, it takes some time. And being at ease, this physiology is located in the heart, the chest specifically. Each one of these has a programming partner. In this case, it's the 10, 15 and the 10 together. There's an amino acid that also tracks, as well as the codon ring. This falls into the ring of humanity. None of that matters today, though, because we're only going to talk about the shadow of self obsession, the gift of naturalness, and the city of being. This is a really hard one to hold space for those of us that have it, because we ultimately have to hold space in our hearts for our own narcissism. Ooh, the N word is a hard one, turns out. I'll let that one sit for a second, too. Pun was intended. When the lower expression, the disharmony, is showing up, it's also important to note that we require this for our evolution. We tend to think of everyone, we want to get people into happiness. We want people to have the best life they want to have. We don't want to honor the darkness and recognize that in the darkness there is gold. And when you are in self-obsession, you are mining for gold. So harmony doesn't look like never mining for gold, but we can bring more awareness to when we are being miners. And you can also bring more of the ease and the naturalness in when you're aware of what it is that you're still mining for. If you are on a healing journey of sorts, then there will be mining involved. You can't be upset when you're mining. You have to love when you are mining. You have to ultimately love a narcissist, which is you, the self-obsession part. I have this in my chart in two places. And it's significant in that um, one is in my past, so it's in a node, so it's in the south node. And after 42, you start heading into your north node, and that's where I'm at. And it's a one line, and to be an authority here, and I had a detriment that felt significant. The line name humility. It's interesting how we attract folks that will tell us that we need to be more humble. Literally had those words three times, always three times. And as a mirror, that also means that the people across from me can only see themselves. They're seeing their own narcissism in there as well. The self-obsession becomes about identity and labels. The self-obsession becomes about knowledge. We tend to think of that as self-improvement. It's been sold as an entire industry of self-improvement. At the end of the day, it's really just self-obsession. That's why self is in self-help. So obsessed with the self, when really all you needed to do was love yourself. We talk about love driving out the darkness or the fear. Those weren't just fancy rhetoric words that Martin Luther King Jr. shared. These are realities. Think of a child that loves their stuffed animal so much that its eyes fall off. That's how you get rid of an imposter. That's how you get rid of a discomfort. You simply give it the love that it's a fear of not having. I'm going to share a little bit from Richard Rudd's book on the gene key, The Mazy Pathways of the Self. As one of the keystones of human individuality, the 10 gene key and its frequency bands point toward one of the deepest of all human issues, the notion of self-love. This intangible force within human beings begins life here in the 10th shadow, where it can bring continual focus on your own immediate environment, which is your body. This is one of the most primitive of all the aspects and archetypes within the human genome. At its shadow frequency, it tightens all of your life force and forces it inward, which in the long run makes it one of the most mystical of the 64 shadows. It is here that the individual journey towards awakening and transcendence truly begins. So congratulations. If you're in the shadow, you're ready to wake up. You're ready to transform. However, this genetic centripetal force excludes other beings from your immediate concern and attention. This would have ensured individual survival, since it put the safety of its own vehicle before anything else. In humanity, to see a person give his life or her life for another for a higher cause is to see this shadow transcended, as its prime purpose is to put oneself first. The emphasis of the shadow is on the individual, which can be both a blessing and a curse. It's so interesting that the human design system discusses how in 2027 we're headed into the age of the individual. It certainly feels like we're on that destructive path. Individual differentiation is the cornerstone of evolution itself. If we humans do not discover our own identity and uniqueness, we cannot transcend it and move our society to a higher level. Maybe it's not going to be so bad then, after all. Notice the paradox that will show up in all of the gene keys, and also that finding out that you've had self-obsession, whether it's people-pleasing and putting other people on pedestals, or if it is self-obsession of, learning about yourself and believing in the identity that you've carved out for yourself, you'll know you're in that place because your relationships will be hard. And it's where you're locked into a love affair with yourself. It's not your true self. There's a love affair with the ego self. The programming partner of the 10th gene key shadow is the 15th shadow of dullness. And since this 15th shadow conceals a fear of being different, it shuts you down at a collective level. The 15th shadow makes us into lemmings that follow the crowd, allowing our uniqueness to be overridden. Just as the 15th shadow puts your attention on everything but your own uniqueness, the 10th shadow does the opposite. It makes you obsessed with your own uniqueness and how to find it and follow it. Thus, in the world today, we can see two main types of people: those who follow the crowd and those who try to escape the crowd at all costs. I would offer we also see the middle way, those that try to wear their masks, whatever you prefer to call that. The 10th shadow does not and cannot consider anyone outside oneself, though that through this shadow you become so self-obsessed that you no longer see or hear the feelings of those around you. This makes it very difficult for other people to relate to you, even though you may feel that you can relate to them. Even though you may have many relationships, the truth is that you really don't have enough space within your psyche for the concept of others. Everything and everyone is viewed through your own subjective projection field, and this loss of objectivity can lead only to one result: creating havoc in all your relationships. Through the lens of the 10th shadow, all you see when you look at others is people you would like to change. I have this twice in my chart, as I mentioned. The other location that shows up in my chart is in Neptune. Both of these are conscious for me as well. It's a 2-line in Neptune, the recluse, and a 1-line in my node. And how I can speak to this experience is, yes, why do you think people become coaches? Because they see people that need to change. CrossFit gym owner. I had my own weight loss. I saw people that needed to change. Oftentimes, coaches become coaches to help people with their own problems that they overcame. Makes you think about counselors as well. Enough about that. We don't want to change them. But it does make it extremely difficult to accept anyone else for their uniqueness. In psychology and psychiatry, self obsession is known as narcissism, and in moderation, it is considered to be an essential component of a healthy psyche. However, the shadow frequency, like the legend it is derived from, it keeps human beings endlessly trapped by their own reflection. That's the key I think people miss when we talk about narcissism. We've created this whole meaning and genre, just like we have that other N word. To take this word back helps you to understand that it is about knowing yourself so deeply. It is being trapped by your own reflection in that sense of how can I make my reflection better? It can look like people pleasing. How can I say the right word so that I get reflected back to me what I want to see? Thus, it's driven by fear. It is a very specific unconscious fear. It's a fear of losing your identity. It's one of the deepest of all human fears. This fear forces you into a pattern of trying to find out who you are in order that you might find some kind of permanent definition in life. This quest for your true identity is the greatest quest there is. It is an ageless journey of self knowledge, epitomized in the famous axiom cut into the stone above the door of the oracle in Delphi: know thyself. However, at the low frequency of the shadow level, this quest for self knowledge becomes an obsession that actually keeps you from defining who and what you are. In your thirst to escape your fear, you create a journey that is no end, filled with drama and adventure, perhaps, but ultimately one in which you never have to face yourself. This is the craft of the 10th shadow. It tricks you into chasing the shadow of your own reflection, and your very journey towards your true nature becomes your own net. If you were listening to this podcast the week of the 4th of July, you were catching it when the 39 is activated, which is my purpose in relationships. So thank you for being here, because this is what deeply fulfills me, is sparking a new way of thinking, seeing, ultimately allowing you to be in more harmony. You can love the journey that you've had with your self-obsession. You must. There's allow, accept, embrace. When we embrace things, we're no longer resisting. Even in acceptance, there isn't a full embrace. It's taken me a decade to embrace this, although I didn't find this system until a few years ago, and this made it exponentially more faster. Having the ability to laugh at yourself, the dramas you've created, the cool things you've learned in your own self-obsession. But ultimately, it is the emptying of it all that leads us to being a natural. There's a book I had just referred to a client on, First Things First, Break All the Rules, and it's kind of what being a natural becomes. Only can happen, though, when self-obsession exhausts itself. So everyone with this key theme somewhere will have a journey on purpose. Intentionally, you are mining for gold. This is exciting. It didn't feel exciting all the time when I share it with clients, but it becomes exciting as you start to recognize that your own unique journey, your identity it's not defined by a label. You're not your name, your actions, you're not your feelings, your beliefs. There's something greater and wider out there than you ever suspected. I think of my weekend, we were sitting in a coffee shop somewhere between Buffalo and Ithaca. And I was just looking around thinking, get all these beautiful souls just walking around here. Do people realize that these are souls, like in these human shells? And it was just a fun curiosity as I looked to like the soul to the left of me who ordered uh, a coffee and some type of alcoholic beverage, a beer, I think. um, just looking at the different souls and their expressions, their naturalness. They were doing something so mundane, it has to be natural. He goes on to say, at the gift level of frequency, there is a huge releasing of energy through your being and out into your life as all attempts at defining who you are begin to subside. The usual manifestations of this energy is an intense creativity coupled with a sense of playfulness. You lose your sense of identity and simultaneously begin to feel centered in a wider context. The gift of naturalness cannot be practiced, copied, or systemized. It can only emerge through a rising sense of inner freedom and spaciousness. This lands on the word I was looking for to explain to my partner who's helping me launch my new website that I don't have a system and I don't have a methodology and we're not in a program. There's an experience that leads to an inner sense of freedom and spaciousness. The sense of increasing ease and relaxedness in your life tends to follow an age-old archetype sequence that appears to be universal. Jung called it individuation. It begins with, who am I? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? It kicks off this inner questioning of purpose and meaning in your life. The second phase of becoming natural tends to be a deeper inner questioning and questing in which you isolate yourself in some sense from your previous responsibilities and give time and space to understanding your own nature more. For most people, this phase lasts a long time. It is also the phase during which most people become stuck in the lower frequencies of self-obsession, falling in love with the endless quest for self-knowledge. I met a woman who was here at this place in her life. She wasn't quite 50, and it had been years, and she was seeking. She had invested tens of thousands of dollars into the seeking quest, continued to seek. I was part of the seeking. I stopped the seeking because I didn't request her to continue to sign up because there was a knowing that she wasn't meant to be seeking. She's meant to be still. I imagine a sabbatical for someone that has this. This particular client had this in her core wound and gene keys. And it was a short-lived client because she wasn't ready to leave the dark night of the soul. And then I'm here for upheaval. So when you're ready, when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. And so knowing that most people get stuck here, and here you are listening to this, ready to be unstuck. Part of that unsticking is falling in love with all of your self-obsession, falling in love with all the gold that you found, all the things that you learned, including this moment right here. Because at a certain point, you will realize the futility of trying to find something that is clearly indefinable. This realization marks a huge transition point in your life and represents the release from your self-obsession. It can also be a very challenging time as you let go of all the constructs and techniques with which you may have identified and from which you derived security. Fortunately, this third phase swiftly becomes consolidated and integrated into your being, and you enter a new dimension in which you become more and more deeply relaxed. This fourth phase is something like a rebirth as you externalize what is truly inside you for the first time in your life. It is a deep joyousness and purpose, and it is only as you find this sense of relaxedness that you begin once again to feel truly natural. The fifth and final phase, becoming yourself, manifests as the flowering of your individualized, differentiated self. This is when you hit the peak of your own mythology and bring something entirely new into the world based on the high principle that is always latent within you. This final flowering of your inner being manifests as a challenge to the current norm, since your true nature is always found at the cutting edge of evolution. The idea, whatever it may be, represents the true beauty within the individual finding expression in the world. He talks about hidden pathways and references to how to get through here, and walks through this ring of humanity. I have several of these, and here is the mythological element that he describes of what it means to be a human being. Wounded from the outset. This is the number 25. So if you're playing bingo and you have the 25, this was the original wound. You must do battle with your shadows. Number 38, if you're playing bingo and have that on your card. I do. It's my radiance. I do battle with my shadows. Overcome the limitations of your mind, the 17. I also have that. It's my life's work. Surrender your need to control life. That is the 21. That is my relating. And find your true self, the 10 that we've just described here, before you can awaken. The awaken is the number 51. And you can see where all of these, if you have them in your chart, who you are a human being here to awaken fully. You can see from this profound grouping how deeply bonded we humans are by the same basic traumas. Because if you don't have them in your chart, you still can see that this is your journey and this is the awakening. There's great beauty to be discovered here. And when you find it, you will finally realize that naturalness is the simplest thing of all. It is simply there inside you the moment you decide to stop arguing with life. Which is why I like to encourage people to, if you're suffering, please enjoy it. Give yourself some love because you are a masochist and you need it. Once you stop struggling and fighting and arguing, it is simply there. And it is about individualization. People with this as a core talent, like you're here to bring something so new into the world. You probably feel that burning inside you. You may not know what it is yet. That woman I mentioned before, she still, I don't know. I've lost contact with her, but whether she's found it or not, it's a deep knowing that you're here to bring something, but letting go of identity. I've had mine twice let go of. Third time's a charm because that's the one I got to rebuild. And I was lucky enough to find a system when I did it. That story that involves a psychiatric trip, some mushrooms, a business partner is in jail for murder. Another one, it was worse. That one you can find on Katie's Classroom paid content where I share all the real fun stories of my life because storytelling, huge gift of mine, and it's how we learn. Thank you for checking out Gene Key 10 today. I didn't talk about the city of this. I suppose I should. Divine Laziness is the name. And it's interesting that we can get caught up in busyness when the divinity really lies in laziness. And the cities, from a contemplation standpoint, you're not meant to spend so much time contemplating your shadow. You're really meant to contemplate the highest expression of this energy, which is being. When the differentiated self is manifested in its high expression in the world, the 10th gift, one final surprise lies in store. There is a sixth phase to the process of becoming yourself that brings an end to the whole notion of self knowledge. In a sense, it is a return to the stage before you ask the fateful question, who am I? It is a state of being. In the 10th city, the differentiated self spontaneously dissolves in a higher mirror of the third phase, in which the constructs of your search for self knowledge end. Here, everything dissolves self, not self, mind, form, purpose, meaning. The only word that gives a hint of what the 10th city holds is the word being, also known as I am. Only there is no sense of I, only pure consciousness being expressed. It is destined to be deeply misunderstood by all those who don't live in its embrace. This is one of the greatest paradoxes for all times. The paradox is well expressed through a phenomenon particular in Buddhism. This idea of enlightenment or self-realization. These two expressions of human perfection can be understood as being and becoming. The Aharat is of the 10th city representing pure being, a state in which evolution no longer exists or matters. For the Aharat, once he or she is enlightened, the whole universe is also enlightened. So there is nothing more to be done. For the Bodhisattva, who is the 15th city, there is no end to life, which is continually evolving state of flowering. Thus, this takes a vow to deliberately hold back their enlightenment in favor of helping evolution complete itself in the form of guiding others towards the state of liberation. To experience life through the 10th city is to see everything that normal humans think of as important reduced to a game or illusion. To the Arat, life is meaningless, time is an illusion, and therefore evolution itself is a game. Because this viewpoint is generally viewed by the unenlightened as selfish and threatening to their ongoing identification of evolution, the Arat has been mostly eschewed in favor of Bhattacharya. the flow of the politics of enlightenment. To those outside these states, they appear contrary to one another, but to be the being manifesting both of them are experienced. The only differentiation between them is the language that the person uses to describe his or her experience. The Aharat has nothing left to do in the world, where the Bodhisattva has a deeply focused mission to help others. How beautiful to hold both of those inside you. To know that your authenticity is all there is that needs to be done. And yet, there is still work to do to be in this world and of this world at the same time. Fun things for you to contemplate. I love the reminder he leaves at the end. Nothing has more power than being itself. We would do well to remember the nature of being that rests behind all the dramas of the world and our individual lives. To rest unattached in the supreme state of being, whilst at the same time participating in the adventure of our evolution, is quite possibly the greatest task that human beings of the future will have to master. Being has no agenda or direction. It simply is. In many ways, this is a gift I bring to life in a lot of my coaching sessions because I allow people to be, and they just are. And the same gets to be true for me. When we embrace this naturalness, we don't do anything outside of our own nature. And yet we evolve because that's how time seems to work in this construct that we've created. Simply waking up 5 years from now, being your authentic self, you will have evolved. I will probably have evolved a few gray hairs. A few questions to leave you with for some contemplation that show up here in the Wisdom Keeper's Inner Guidebook, 64 Phases of Awakening. If you are new to the system, I really love this because it's such little, tiny little juicy pieces that can be really helpful and contemplative. Where are you compromising or losing yourself and others? Where are you self-obsessed or clinging too tightly to an identity, a way of thinking, being, or doing? Where might you still be playing the martyr? Where do you need to stop compromising? Think of a time you experienced true naturalness, when you fully relaxed in your own skin. What about that situation brought out the naturalness in you? In what ways can you expand your sense of self, of being? Write your reflections in this journal. Enjoy until I see you next time in a live class, which if you're interested in joining, you can text I'm Owl, O-W-L, in I-N-N. You're going to text at I'm Owl in to 81010. You can join Katie's classroom. I'll send you a Zoom link for the next meetup.